Her daughter-in-law handed her a trash bag and called it helping. Lila Carson, co-owner of the house and widow of the man who built it, didn't argue. By the end of the month, her name would block every sale, freeze every refinance, and stop every silent power play. For years, Kelsey smiled while edging her out. One holiday, one hallway, one lie at a time. But the deed never forgot what they tried to erase. And when they came for her half of the house, the paperwork reminded them who still lived in it. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The hot dog sizzled. So did the insult. She thought Lila didn't hear it, but she said it loud enough for the smoke to carry. "I swear," Kelsey muttered to her clutch of friends, each of them holding plastic cups like champagne flutes. "She's just here for free food." A ripple of laughter followed, too high and too quick, the sound of people performing kindness in its absence. Lila sat 10 feet away beneath the faded shade of a striped umbrella, her lemonade sweating into a mason jar. She didn't flinch, didn't turn her head. But the words folded neatly in her mind and filed themselves into a part of her memory where things didn't go to die. They waited. Most of the guests were Kelsey's crowd. Young couples with mirrored sunglasses and curated laughs, all radiating the glossy sheen of online perfection. Lila recognized none of them, and none of them tried to change that. She stirred her drink slowly, letting the ice clink once, then again. Her gaze wandered across the yard, the grill smoking, the string lights waiting for dusk, Chase playing host while trailing behind his wife like he had somewhere more important to be. Naomi sat across the lawn under the wide reach of an oak, her poker visor low and her eyes sharp. She caught Lila's gaze and mouthed, "You good?" Lila gave the smallest smile and folded her napkin in her lap. No drama, no scene, just precision. Kelsey, meanwhile, was glowing. She made the rounds with the effortless grace of someone who thought she owned the land she walked on. Patriotic romper, white wedges, the air around her laced with too sweet perfume and the buzz of attention. "She doesn't even live here full-time," Lila heard one of the friends say. "Why's she always around?" Kelsey gave a casual shrug. "It's my husband's mom, technically." "Technically?" Lila let that word settle. Not with anger, just with clarity. The food was average, the company dismissive, but Lila stayed seated and quiet, the way she had learned to be in rooms that expected her to shrink. She didn't need to interject. She was listening. Chase passed by once, tossing a half-hearted smile her way. "You good, Mom?" "Great," Lila replied. He didn't linger for a response. By late afternoon, the sun had dropped just enough to light the house in honey. The music shifted from thumping pop to acoustic covers, and the crowd thinned out to the people who thought themselves core. Lila watched the shadows stretch over the grass and the flies begin their dance. When she finally stood, her knees gave a small complaint, but she didn't wobble. Kelsey approached from the patio, red nails perfect, a trash bag pinched between two fingers. "You don't mind cleaning up, right?" she asked, in the tone reserved for receptionists and retail workers. A smile hung at the edge of her lips, sharp, bright, condescending. Lila looked at the bag, then at Kelsey. "Of course," she said, taking it. "I've always known how to clean things up." Kelsey was already turned away, laughing at something one of her friends said about brunch plans and lake houses. Across the yard, Naomi raised her root beer in a silent toast, her eyes sparkling with something that looked suspiciously like approval. Lila didn't toast back. She just nodded once and walked toward the trash bin, slow but certain. The insult had landed and settled, but not the way Kelsey thought, because Lila was already thinking of drawers, of deeds, of a fireproof box Brian had left locked since 2007, and how some paper burns cleaner than others. The lock clicked open with a stubborn twist, the metal groaning like it remembered what it was built to guard. Dust rose in a slow cloud, and Lila waved a hand through it, blinking against the sudden sting in her eyes. It had been nearly 9 years. 9 quiet years of honoring boundaries, biting her tongue, and letting her own home become a place she only visited. But today, she wasn't here to reminisce. She was here to collect receipts. She knelt beside the old cabinet, knees stiff but mind sharp, and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside were yellowing files in Brian's handwriting, block letters, all caps, military precision. Carson, House Docs, VA, Pension Medicare, Medical. She scanned until she saw it, the envelope stamped in bold red. Property deed, 2007. Refinance, joint ownership. Her fingers tightened around the edges as she slid it out. She remembered this envelope. She remembered that whole week. Kelsey had been sugar-sweet, calling daily, baking banana bread that no one asked for, dropping phrases like family loyalty and just a signature to help us start. Their mortgage had been denied, too much debt, not enough credit. Chase hadn't even looked her in the eyes when he asked. It had been Kelsey who insisted Lila's name would just be a formality. Back then, Brian had pulled her aside the night before the notary was set to come. He handed her the envelope and said, "Only sign if they treat you right." She hadn't. Inside was the updated deed with her name still clearly attached. Lila Carson, co-owner, typed, recorded, filed, and as she now realized, forgotten by everyone except the county. She flipped through the attached documents. There was no transfer of interest, no quitclaim, nothing. A quiet thrill ran through her. She stood, moving slowly toward the kitchen table where she kept her reading glasses and a small lamp with a soft, amber glow. The mortgage statements were in a slim drawer, unopened mail Chase and Kelsey had forwarded out of obligation. 3 letters sat in a neat pile, each one stamped in red. Payment past due, 60 days. Lila's lips pursed as she slid a finger under the flap and pulled the first one open. She scanned the numbers, the unpaid balance, the accruing penalties. They hadn't just fallen behind, they were sinking. She opened the lid to her small desktop copier, the same one Brian used to print tax forms and crossword puzzles, and laid the deed flat. The machine hummed, then whirred to life. She made 2 copies, one for the attorney, one for herself. With slow, deliberate care, she opened her filing cabinet and pulled out a fresh manila folder. In black marker, she wrote one word across the tab: Independence. The copy of the mortgage slid inside with the satisfying hush of finality. She sat back, eyes narrowing slightly as her gaze drifted to the window. Outside, wind chimes whispered in the breeze. From a distance, a lawnmower buzzed. But inside, the house was still, solid. Hair in half of that property Kelsey pranced through like a queen still belonged to her, and if Kelsey thought yesterday's insult had fallen on deaf ears, she was about to learn otherwise, not with rage, not with shouting, with paperwork. Lila reached for a sticky note and wrote 3 things in bold, clean handwriting. 1. Jared. Credit union. 2. Legal review. 3. Recheck utility bills. She stuck it to the front of the folder. This wasn't revenge yet, it was just arithmetic. The credit union smelled like printer toner and stale peppermint, the kind of clean that had seen 1,000 signatures and 1,000 regrets. Lila walked in wearing her pressed tan slacks and navy cardigan, armor in soft fabric. Her flats clicked gently on the tile as she passed rows of waiting chairs. Behind the main counter, a man looked up from his screen. He blinked, then smiled. "Ms. Carson?" Lila stopped mid-step. "You're good." Jared Price. He was older than she remembered, a bit of gray at the temples, fuller in the shoulders, but the kindness was still there, right behind his eyes. "You helped me file for a disability adjustment on my VA loan back in what? 2012? He said, rising to shake her hand. "I've still got your checklist in my desk drawer." She chuckled. "Then you're one of the smart ones." He led her back to his office, past cubicles humming with quiet conversations and the low clatter of keyboards. The room was small but organized, tidy desk, a photo of his kids on a hiking trail, a small flag folded neatly in a triangular case behind him. "So," Jared said, motioning for her to sit. "What brings you in?" She laid the manila folder on his desk and opened it slowly, like a poker hand she'd been waiting to reveal. I need to confirm if my name is still on a property deed. Co-ownership. My son and his wife refinanced a house in 2007 and I co-signed the mortgage, but I never signed away my interest. He leaned forward. Address? She recited it from memory. Not a hitch. He typed for a few seconds, then narrowed his eyes at the screen. Well, I'll be damned. Lila crossed one leg over the other. Still there? Oh, it's there, he said, turning the screen so she could see. Her name, clean and legal, right beside Chase's. Your daughter-in-law might think she owns that house, but your name's still attached. On title, on record, and on liability. Lila smiled. Good, let's talk options. Jared looked intrigued but not surprised. Refinancing? Home equity? You looking to borrow against it? I'm looking to understand my leverage, she said plainly. Can they do anything to that property without my signature? Nope, he replied. Not refinance, not sell, not take out a second. Any big move requires your consent. And judging by this, he tapped a second tab, they've missed 3 payments, which puts them in a very delicate position. Her smile grew. Delicate. I like that. He chuckled under his breath. I'll print out the full file for you, title, mortgage, payment history, and I'll have a certified copy sent to your mailing address. Want it expedited? Yes, please. And Jared? Yeah. She looked at him directly. You remember Brian Carson? His face softened. He was my case manager at the VA. I remember him always having peppermints in his shirt pocket. She nodded. That box of his? Still full of files. Turns out he was holding the receipts for me all along. That night, Naomi pulled into Lila's driveway with a grocery bag in one hand and mischief in her eyes. I brought snacks, she said, and bourbon. You looked like someone who'd had a day. They sat at the kitchen table, sipping neat pours while the paper copy of the deed rested between them. Naomi skimmed the name on the title and gave a low whistle. Well, well, well. Look who's still the queen of the castle. Lila just sipped her drink. Naomi leaned in. You about to light something up? Lila didn't blink. Just the truth. Some people burn bridges. Lila burned assumptions. Quiet ones, mostly. The kind people make when they think you're too polite to push back. The envelope from Jared sat on her table for a full minute before she opened it. Not out of doubt, just ceremony. Inside were the clean lines of her name on the deed, the payment records, the missed mortgage installments. 3 in total. Lila reviewed every line with the same focus she used to read military pension appeals, slowly, carefully, and with a pencil in hand. Chase and Kelsey were underwater and had no clue someone else was holding the oxygen tank. She started with a box in the hall closet, Brian's old file safe, organized down to the paperclip. Inside were HOA notices, utility statements, and one particularly stern letter from the local association about unpaid annual dues, $1,129.42. Postmarked April. Lila whistled softly. Slipping, Kelsey. She copied everything, scanned, filed, labeled. Her new Independence folder was thickening. Later that afternoon, she sat at her kitchen counter scrolling through Facebook. There it was, a fresh post from Kelsey, dated that morning. Grateful every day for our beautiful home. Took forever to get here, but hard work pays off. Hunter dream house? Blessed beyond belief. The photo showed Kelsey standing in front of the porch, hand on her hip, sunglasses perched like a crown. Chase was off to the side, half smiling like someone who'd missed the joke. Lila stared at the image, then tapped the screen, zooming in. Her hydrangeas were in full bloom along the walkway. She'd planted them herself 2 springs ago. Kelsey had once called them too old lady looking. She closed the app. Then she made a call. The law office was quiet and smelled faintly of ink and lemon oil. Lila sat across from a young real estate attorney in navy slacks and a striped tie who looked like he still called his mother every Sunday. He flipped through the copies she laid before him. Your name is on the deed. There's no quitclaim, no amendment. You are, in full, a legal co-owner. Lila folded her hands. What does that give me? He leaned back. Technically, the right to block any financial decisions, and if you choose, you can petition to force a sale. Even if they live there? Especially if they're behind on payments, he said, tapping the overdue notice with one finger. You'd be within your rights. Lila gave a single nod. Good. He raised an eyebrow. You want me to draw something up? Letter of intent to sell. My share only for now. That evening, Lila stood at the dining room table and slid a fresh, wallet-sized print of the deed behind her ID. Not to wave around, just to carry, quiet proof. She poured a cup of tea and opened the top drawer of her filing cabinet. Her will had been last updated in 2015. Back then, it had named Chase as sole beneficiary. She removed the page, crossed out his name, and placed a sticky note on top. To be replaced. See attorney, no drama, no obituary for old expectations, just maintenance. Outside, a wind picked up. The chimes on the porch danced against each other like they were whispering secrets. Lila walked to her desk, pulled out the printed letter of intent, and signed it with a ballpoint pen in steady strokes. Her name curled at the bottom like it belonged there. Lila brought pie, and a pen, and a choice. The crust was golden and the filling still warm. Apple, cinnamon, with a hint of nutmeg, like Brian always liked it. She'd placed it carefully into a glass dish and tucked it into a quilted carrier. Hospitality still had a place, even in battle. Kelsey opened the door just wide enough to show she didn't expect a visit, let alone one bearing dessert. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile wasn't. Oh. Hi, she said, stepping back. What a surprise. Lila held up the dish. Baked this morning, thought I'd stop by. Kelsey took it, automatically, as if social reflex overrode her instinct to slam the door. Chase is in the garage, working on something. Lila nodded. I'll wait inside. The kitchen was suspiciously clean. A vase of grocery store tulips sat on the counter, and the smell of citrus cleaner still clung to the air. Lila took a seat at the dining table, placing her purse beside her chair with slow, deliberate care. Kelsey returned with 2 dessert plates, performing a smile. You didn't have to go to the trouble. I didn't, Lila replied, slicing the pie evenly. I just like offering something sweet before the real conversation begins. Kelsey's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I've been thinking, Lila said, placing a napkin across her lap. Might be time to sell off some of my equity. Kelsey blinked. Equity? In the house, Lila said, voice light, almost cheerful. Been reading up on partial interest sales. Turns out people buy into homes all the time, especially when one owner wants out. There was a moment of silence. Then a laugh, short, nervous. You don't actually own any of it? Lila pulled a single sheet from her purse, a copy of the mortgage. Her name, in black and white, glinting beneath the kitchen light. She laid it gently on the table. Kelsey's face dropped like a curtain. I signed on as a co-owner in 2007, Lila said. I never relinquished my interest, which means I still own half of this house, legally and publicly. Footsteps sounded from the hall, and Chase appeared, wiping his hands on a rag. Hey, Mom. What's going on? Ask your wife, Lila said, never turning her head. Kelsey scrambled to regain footing. She's saying she owns part of the house. That can't be right. Chase's eyes dropped to the document. When he saw her name, clear and undeniable, the color drained from his face. She can't sell it without— She doesn't need your permission, Lila cut in. Only the laws, and mine. The room went still. I'm not here to fight, Lila continued. I'm here to offer a choice. You can buy me out, fair market value, or I move forward with a partial sale. Kelsey's mouth opened, then shut. Her hand gripped the fork like she might bend it. Chase looked from his mother to his wife, then back again. Why now? He asked quietly. Why bring this up like this? Lila stood, smoothing her blouse. Because no one listens when I talk. So now I'm done talking. She gathered her purse, leaving the pie and the copy behind. Kelsey's voice came low, sharp as broken glass. You wouldn't dare, Lila paused in the doorway, just long enough to respond without turning. "You said I was just here for free food. I figured I'd bring something of value instead." She closed the door behind her with the soft finality of someone who knew exactly where the next step would lead. Lila gave them 30 days. They used 29 to insult her. On day 30, she picked up the phone and called the broker. But by then, the decision had already been made. The clock started ticking the moment Lila left the pie dish on their counter. She had told them clearly, without a tremble in her voice, "Buy me out or I sell." Simple terms, fair ones. She'd expected hesitation. She hadn't expected the smear campaign. It started subtly. Whispers in the grocery store aisles, a neighbor across the street who stopped waving. Then the phone calls began. One from an old church friend who cautiously asked if Lila was doing okay on her own, followed by a message from a former coworker. "Kelsey said you've been confused lately. If you ever need help managing your accounts, I know a guy." Lila didn't need help managing anything. She'd managed a household through Brian's chemo. She'd managed veterans' pensions with a ballpoint pen and a calculator older than the kids running the office now. What she needed, apparently, was a notepad. Naomi noticed first. "She's painting you fragile," Naomi said, flipping through her tablet with one hand and sipping sweet tea with the other. "That's the playbook. Undermine your credibility before you hit the gas." Lila set down her cup. "Then let's give her something accurate to be scared of." She bought a new notebook. Bright red cover, spiral binding, every insult logged, every phone call recorded with timestamps, notes on tone, exact words. When Chase called midweek, she didn't even need to open the page. She already knew what he'd say. "She didn't mean it that way," he said, voice low and worn, like an apology soaked too long in guilt. Lila leaned on the windowsill, looking out at her hydrangeas. "She said it. That's the part you keep skipping. She's just scared. We both are." "That's not my doing," she said evenly. "That's the cost of her forgetting who she married into." He went quiet. "I raised you better than silence, Chase." The line disconnected softly a few moments later. On day 17, Lila received a notice from the water company. "Final warning. 60 days overdue." She blinked at it, lips pressed tight. The total wasn't enormous, but the message was clear. Kelsey and Chase had stopped paying the bills, or at least the ones with her name still tied to them. She called the utility office, had the account rerouted to her mailing address. "I like to keep an eye on things," she told the woman on the phone. The clerk chuckled, unaware she'd just confirmed a weapon. By day 22, the couple avoided her altogether. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive emoji in the family group thread. As if radio silence could reverse a signed deed, Lila didn't mind. Quiet was fertile ground for action. On the morning of day 30, the sky was a dusty blue, streaked with the hint of a coming storm. Lila brewed her coffee, fed her dog, and sat at her kitchen table with the Independence folder laid out like a playbook. She picked up the phone. "Hi, this is Miss Carson. I'm ready to list my share of the property. Full exposure. Let's see what we can get." The broker's voice perked up. "You sure?" "I've never been sure of anything I wasn't supposed to know I could do." She ended the call and slipped the final draft of the listing paperwork into a manila envelope. Her hand was steady. Across the street, wind rustled the lawn signs. One for a candidate she didn't vote for, one advertising Kelsey Carson, interior design. Lila smirked. The curb appeal might be lovely, but inside? The foundation had rot. Lila didn't knock. She didn't ring the doorbell. She simply walked across the dewy front lawn of 208 Carson Street at 8:17 a.m. on a Sunday morning, carrying a metal stake and a glossy white and blue "for sale, partial ownership" sign under one arm. The yard still wore last night's shadows, the grass damp against her shoes. A mockingbird chattered in the crepe myrtle. Somewhere down the block, a lawn sprinkler hissed to life. She dug the stake into the soft earth beside the mailbox, neatly trimmed, freshly mulched, and stepped back, dusting her hands off on her jeans. The sign stood tall, unshaken, just like her. "Good morning," called Mrs. Ellison from across the street, peering over her porch railing. "Everything all right, Lila?" Lila turned with a polite smile. "Just reclaiming some square footage." Mrs. Ellison squinted, her robe tied loose at the waist. "You selling the house?" "Just my half," Lila said sweetly. "Seems I have more of it than anyone remembered." By 9:05 a.m., 2 neighbors had wandered over, coffee in hand, eyebrows raised. One asked if she was moving in. Another asked if she was being forced out. Lila responded the same way each time, never raising her voice. "No one forces me. Not anymore." She stayed just long enough to make sure the sign caught the morning light. Then she sat on the porch swing of her own home across the street, sipped her tea, and waited. At 10:42 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the driveway, tires crunching the gravel with sudden urgency. Kelsey stepped out first, wearing oversized sunglasses and a white blouse too expensive for pancake syrup. She froze when she saw the sign, her hand going slack around her designer tote. No, she muttered, jogging to the front yard like the sign might vanish if she moved fast enough. Chase got out slower, confusion written across his face until he followed her gaze. His posture deflated. Kelsey spun on her heel. "Lila!" Lila stood slowly and walked back across the street, each step deliberate. "What the hell is this?" Kelsey shrieked, gesturing wildly toward the sign like it had insulted her lineage. "You don't get to just plant that here like it's your property." Lila raised her eyebrows. "You're right. I don't get to plant it like it's just mine." She paused, then smiled. "Because it's ours." "You're insane." "I'm thorough," Lila replied. "Your 30 days came and went. I kept my word. Now I'm keeping my options." Chase stepped between them, hands up. "Mom, please, can we just talk?" "I made you a deal," Lila said calmly, eyes on him. "You made me an afterthought." "You're trying to ruin us." "No, Chase, I'm trying to remind you I exist." Kelsey let out a half sob, half growl, and stormed up the porch steps, slamming the front door behind her. The sign swayed slightly in the breeze. Across the sidewalk, Naomi snapped a photo on her phone, then grinned behind her sunglasses. "If I post that with no caption, it's still poetry." Lila didn't respond right away. She just stared at the door that had slammed in her face so many times before. "I gave them room," she said quietly. "They just kept trying to erase me in it." Naomi slipped her arm through Lila's. "Then it's about damn time you took up space." Later that afternoon, while folding laundry and humming to herself, Lila's phone buzzed on the windowsill. "Text from Realtor, 2:13 p.m. We've got an offer. Full cash, no contingencies." Lila stared at it. The folded towel in her hands paused mid-air. The weight of possibility didn't scare her. It thrilled her. If Kelsey had spoken to her with kindness, this meeting wouldn't exist. But instead of kindness, there had been a trash bag, a whisper at a barbecue, and 30 days of silence loud enough to crack foundations. So when Chase knocked on Lila's door just after 7 p.m., looking like someone who'd skipped dinner and maybe a few nights of sleep, she was already at the kitchen table with a fresh cup of black tea and the offer sheet folded neatly in front of her. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice tentative, hands in his jacket pockets. "Can I come in?" She gave a nod but not a smile. "Shoes off?" He slipped them off without protest. Lila motioned to the seat across from her. "I wanted to talk without the storm," he said, sinking into the chair. She stirred her tea. "Which storm is that? The financial one or the moral one?" Chase winced. "I know things got tense." "Tense is what happens between equals," she said calmly. This was dismissal. He rubbed his temples. "We're not trying to hurt you, Mom. It's just we're underwater. If this house sells, we have nowhere to go. You know what the market's like." Lila leaned back, eyes steady. "Then maybe you should have thought twice before inviting me into a contract and treating me like wallpaper." He sighed, shoulders slumping. "We can't match the offer. We can't do $150,000. I was thinking, maybe we could do 20. As a gesture, Lila's brows lifted ever so slightly. "A gesture," she repeated. He nodded quickly. To thank you for your help with the loan, for co-signing back then. It'd help us all walk away clean. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. He's there, isn't he? Don't accept scraps. Lila looked up. Chase, do you know how much equity this house has gained since 2007? He shook his head. Over $300,000. Your wife just offered me $20,000. That's not a gesture, that's an insult dressed as pity. He swallowed hard. We're just trying to keep our lives together. You're trying to keep her pride intact, Lila said, and that's not my job. She stood, walked to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the mortgage copy, the same one she'd shown weeks ago. She placed it between them again. You knew what this meant. You knew I was on the deed. You were just hoping I'd forget I matter. There was a beat of silence so thick it made the walls feel closer. I didn't want this to get ugly, he said, eyes down. Neither did I, Lila replied. But I'm not the one who made it ugly. I'm just the one sweeping it into daylight. She walked him to the door without another word. As he stepped outside, the porch light flickered on, illuminating the tight lines of his face. I'll tell her you said no, he muttered. Lila paused. Tell her I said $150,000. That's me being generous. Next week, I don't have to be. He walked off slowly, shoes forgotten, socks brushing against the grit of the front path. Later that night, Lila sat with Naomi on the porch swing, a blanket over their legs and a bottle of sparkling water between them. She offered you what? Naomi said, eyes wide. 20 grand, in a kitchen with quartz counters I helped finance. Naomi snorted. You're not asking for revenge, you're charging rent on years of disrespect. Lila didn't laugh, but her smile reached the corner of her mouth. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Chase. It was her broker. Forwarded email, 10:14 p.m., subject, cease property listing, from kelseycarson.design@gmail.com. This sale is illegal. We will pursue legal action if it's not withdrawn immediately. Lila looked at the message, then tapped to save it. Evidence. Fuel. It was Tuesday, humid enough to hang in the lungs. Lila had just finished watering her basil when a silver Hyundai pulled into the drive, tires crunching like someone hesitant but too proud to reverse. A man stepped out, early 30s, pressed khakis and a leather folio under his arm. He had Kelsey's nose and her tight, performative smile. Ms. Carson? He asked, approaching with practiced politeness. I'm Marcus, Kelsey's cousin. I do paralegal work down in Branson. Lila wiped her hands on her gardening towel. You here to weed or negotiate? He chuckled, caught off guard. Actually, I was hoping we could talk, maybe inside. She motioned toward the porch. You'll get more honesty in daylight. They sat, cicadas chirping like restless percussion in the background. Marcus opened his folio and slid a typed offer across the table. $40,000 to relinquish all claims and interests. Lila didn't blink. She simply reached into the side pocket of her gardening apron and pulled out a stapled printout of real estate comps from the past 6 months. She'd highlighted the 3 most relevant. You see that one on Lakeview? She said, tapping the page. Closed at $540,000, split between 2 siblings, nearly identical square footage. And this one down on Hayes Street? Same deal, partial owner buyout, $145,000 for a 47% share. Marcus squinted, mouth slightly open. I didn't realize you'd done this. Homework. I worked 30 years at the VA processing pension appeals. I know how to read numbers when someone's trying to round me down. He swallowed, visibly uncomfortable now. It's not meant as disrespect. Kelsey just... Lila leaned in. Don't finish that sentence. I've had a lifetime of women like her hiding behind men like you. He packed up his papers with a stiff smile. You're not playing. She sipped her iced tea. No, Marcus. I'm closing. That evening, Naomi arrived with boxed wine and a triumphant playlist. To being underestimated, she toasted, clinking her glass gently against Lila's. And then correcting the math. They laughed until the porch light flickered on. Lila's feet were bare, her hair tied back, the legal paperwork stacked neatly on the side table beside her. You know, she said, glancing at the stars. I keep thinking about what I'd do with the money. Naomi raised a brow. Vacation? New car? Something permanent, Lila replied. Something no one can question the value of. Naomi smirked. Like a bench with your name on it? Like a kitchen, Lila said softly. For women who get left behind but still feed everyone else. I already made some calls. Naomi blinked. Wait, are you serious? Lila turned to her. Why not? They thought I was weak because I didn't yell. I'd rather feed people than fight them, but I'll still win. It was nearly midnight when Chase showed up. Lila was reading at her kitchen table, soft lamplight catching the rim of her glasses. She didn't answer the door right away, just long enough to make sure he knew she had a choice. When she opened it, he looked exhausted. T-shirt wrinkled, keys dangling from his hand like a white flag. Mom, he said, is this really who you want to be? She studied him for a long moment. No, she said, this is who I had to become. She didn't invite him in. She didn't have to. Some doors stay shut for good reasons. Lila signed the contract with a red pen, the same one she used to grade resumes at the VA, back when ink meant approval or correction, and every mark carried weight. Now each stroke carved a new future. The office was cool and quiet, the air humming with the low murmur of printers and distant footfalls. Jared slid the pages across the desk with a respectful nod. Full cash offer accepted. We're officially in escrow. Lila adjusted her glasses, clicked the pen twice for good measure, and signed. Slow, intentional. I always liked red, she said. It lets them know you read every word. That afternoon, back at her kitchen table, she opened her checkbook and wrote 3 donations. The first, $20,000 to the Mid-Missouri Food Bank. No name attached. Just an envelope with a return address and a note. Feed those who don't get fed first. The second, $60,000 earmarked for something new. The Warm Table Project, a community kitchen housed inside the women's shelter on Jefferson. She'd already spoken to the director. They'd cried. Naomi, after hearing the plan, showed up in paint-streaked overalls with a canvas swatchbook and an offer. I'll do the walls if you do the lemon bars. Lila agreed. Fair trade. She returned to the Carson house one last time, not to cause a scene, just to walk it. The side door creaked just like it used to when Brian snuck in from mowing the lawn. The smell inside hadn't changed. Lemon cleaner, stale coffee, the faint tang of old paint. She moved through the hall quietly, fingers brushing walls that once held graduation photos, wedding announcements, postcards from places she was never invited to visit. In the living room, she paused beside the couch, once hers, now draped in one of Kelsey's faux fur throws. She remembered Chase sitting on that same couch as a child, feet not touching the floor, holding a peanut butter sandwich with too much jelly. In the kitchen, she pulled out the drawer where she used to keep her measuring spoons. Gone. But in its place, a receipt for quartz countertops and a broken magnet from Cancun. She left the letter on the counter, just a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. This could have been different. Nothing more. Nothing less. Outside, Naomi waited in her car, engine idling, sunglasses on. Lila slid into the passenger seat with no fanfare. You good? Naomi asked, one hand on the gear shift. Better than good, Lila said. I'm free. They drove away slowly. Lila didn't look back. On closing day, she wore her navy blazer and Brian's dog tags beneath it. Not because she needed armor, but because she wanted to feel the full weight of completion. The title agent handed over the final paperwork. Congratulations, Ms. Carson. The transaction is complete. Lila nodded. Thank you. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, the Missouri sun glaring off the pavement like flashbulbs. The old house sat quiet now, sterile and hollow, just another square on a suburban map. That's when she heard it. Kelsey's voice, sharp and acidic, cutting across the yard like a thrown plate. You'll die alone. The words landed heavy in the hot air. A few neighbors looked up. Some winced. One lowered his car window halfway. Lila didn't stop walking, didn't flinch, but she did speak. Then I'll die clean." And she kept walking, her steps slow, steady, and unbothered, like a woman who knew exactly where her story went from here. The condo was small, just 720 square feet, but every inch felt chosen. Unlike the house she'd helped finance and been slowly pushed out of, this place had her name on the lease, her touches on the walls, her rhythm in the silence. The movers had come and gone by noon. Lila unpacked slowly, one box at a time, each drawer filled with deliberate care. No clutter, no passive-aggressive coasters with "blessed" written on them. No sound but the soft, curious steps of Penny, her elderly terrier, sniffing every corner like it was a museum. The place smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Outside, a breeze stirred the balcony blinds. Lila stepped out with a watering can and placed 3 clay pots along the edge: basil, thyme, and rosemary. The herbs looked small now, fragile even, but she knew what a little sunlight and time could do. Inside, the fridge was stocked. Naomi had filled it before she arrived. Homemade jam, frozen meatloaf, and a labeled Tupperware container that simply read, "Eat when you're mad at the world." Lila chuckled to herself as she tucked it beside the orange juice. That evening, as dusk fell over the cul-de-sac and porch lights flickered on like fireflies, Lila opened a chilled bottle of sparkling cider and poured it into a chipped wine glass she refused to part with. She sat on her balcony in a rattan chair, Penny curled at her feet, and held the glass up to the horizon. "To freedom," she said aloud. The bubbles rose in the glass, fizzing softly in the quiet. No one interrupted her. The next day, Claire arrived just past noon, suitcase in one hand, flowers in the other. Her hair was longer than Lila remembered. There was something softer in her jaw, and something older in her eyes. "I would have come sooner," she said. "I just didn't know where to land." "You're here now," Lila said. The hug lasted longer than it should have. Neither of them pulled away first. They spent the afternoon eating crackers and cheese from a paper plate, flipping through Lila's recipe book, and arguing about which pies were overrated. "You really put sour cream in your crust?" Claire asked, laughing. "Only when someone deserves it." Lila didn't tell her how much she'd needed that laugh. Claire didn't need to be told. Later that week, Lila started her morning the same way she always did now, with coffee on the balcony and her feet bare on the cool concrete. The herbs were starting to stretch. Penny barked once at a squirrel and then settled with a sigh. That's when she saw the envelope. A plain, white letter slipped through the mail slot, resting on the tile by her front door, the city's seal in the corner. She opened it slowly, unfolding the paper like it was made of silk. "Dear Ms. Carson, we are pleased to inform you that your grant application for the Warm Table project has been officially approved. Funding will be dispersed in 2 phases, effective immediately." Lila blinked. Read it again. The edges of her mouth turned upward, slowly, deeply, like someone learning how to smile with her whole face again. She walked back out to the balcony, holding the letter in one hand, Penny trailing behind her. The basil leaves had opened wide overnight. The Warm Table project opened on a cloudy Tuesday morning, tucked inside the rear wing of the Jefferson Women's Resource Shelter. No ribbon cutting, no camera crews, just Lila, Naomi, a few folding chairs, and the smell of cinnamon rolls still steaming from the oven. The room had once been a dusty recreation hall. Now it breathed. Light yellow walls, a refurbished pantry, 2 donated commercial fridges, and a long wooden island in the center, handmade by a retired carpenter who had lost his daughter to eviction. Naomi smoothed out the new hand-sewn banner above the window that read, "Come hungry, leave whole." "You sure you don't want your name on that wall?" Naomi asked, brushing flour off her shirt. Lila was slicing lemon bars with clinical precision. "I didn't build it for a plaque. I built it for women who need a place to feel normal again." "And what do you feel?" "Solid," she said. "Like finally, I'm giving something that doesn't ask for anything back." By the second week, word had spread. Women from the shelter began bringing friends. Volunteers showed up unannounced with bags of groceries or stories about someone they knew who could have used a space like this sooner. They didn't ask questions. They just put on aprons. Every Thursday, Lila baked lemon bars, just like she had for years at every family cookout, church event, and birthday Chase forgot. But here, people remembered. Here, they came back for seconds and stayed for conversation. A girl named Maribel asked if she could take home extras for her kids. Lila gave her the entire tray. "You sure?" Maribel had whispered, eyes wide. "You got mouths to feed," Lila replied. "I've got pans to wash. That's a fair trade." Naomi chuckled from the sink. "You're going to be a legend before Labor Day." "I'm too old for legends," Lila said, "but maybe not for legacy." The article showed up on Saturday. Lila hadn't known the young reporter was from the Mid-Missouri Courier. She thought she was just another volunteer, quiet, polite, eager to help bag fresh produce and ask about recipes. But the paper's front page that morning said, "She chose food over fury, retired VA clerk turns house battle into a haven." Below it was a photo. Lila, sleeves rolled up, smiling faintly while icing a sheet cake. Naomi burst into her condo with 2 copies and a bag of powdered donuts. "You're famous!" Lila looked down at her own face in newsprint and shook her head. "I didn't even brush my hair that day." "Doesn't matter," Naomi said, dropping the bag on the table. "You look like someone who showed up, and that's rarer than perfect hair." Across town, Kelsey read the same article. Her lips curled, her jaw clenched. The mention of the real estate fallout that catalyzed a community resource made her choke on her overpriced green juice. She slammed the paper onto the counter and muttered, "She did this to humiliate me." But Lila never mentioned her name. Not once. She didn't need to. That evening, after the last dish was washed and the kitchen floor gleamed under the flicker of fluorescent lights, Lila returned home to find a thick ivory envelope in her mailbox. Her name was printed in bold script. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of stationery with an official city seal at the top. "We are pleased to inform you, Ms. Carson, that you have been nominated for the 2025 Senior Service Award." She read it twice, then placed it on the table beside the lemon bars cooling for tomorrow. The Senior Service Award ceremony was held in the Town Hall auditorium, dressed in patriotic bunting and clumsy optimism. The stage smelled of old varnish and fresh carnations. Rows of plastic chairs lined the floor, filled with city council members, former winners, local nonprofits, and the types who wore flag pins year-round. Lila sat in the second row, dressed in a simple red blouse, white slacks, and her navy blue cardigan. Penny's name tag was tucked in her purse, right beside the copy of the invitation. Claire and Naomi flanked her like bodyguards of grace. "You nervous?" Naomi asked, nudging her. "No," Lila said, "not anymore." When they called her name, the applause rose like a slow tide, hesitant, then full. Lila stood carefully, her knees steady beneath her. As she walked to the podium, Claire whispered, "That's my mother." The MC offered a framed certificate and an awkward handshake. She accepted both with a tight smile. Then Lila turned toward the microphone. The room stilled. "I didn't bring a speech," she said. "I brought a life." She paused, scanning faces she didn't know, and a few she did. Teachers, cashiers, even a woman from the bakery who always doubled the lemon slices when Lila came in. "I was told once that aging quietly was graceful. But silence isn't grace. It's erasure in slow motion. I didn't ask for recognition. I asked for dignity, and when I didn't get it, well, I remembered who I was." A murmur moved through the crowd. She let it settle. "I wasn't born strong. I became strong one insult at a time, one forgotten birthday, one chair pulled away at one too many holiday tables. I built a kitchen, not because I'm a saint, but because I got tired of feeding people who only came back to take." She closed the folder in front of her even though it was blank. Kindness isn't weakness, and age isn't irrelevance. If you're sitting here today wondering if your voice still matters, I'm here to remind you that it does, especially when you use it to build something no one can tear down. Silence. Then the applause returned, louder, full-bodied, reverent. Naomi whooped. Claire stood before the others did. Lila nodded once, That was enough. Afterward, a woman in her late 20s approached with nervous eyes and a trembling voice. "You don't know me," she said, "but my sister's in the shelter. She said she met a lady who gave her lemon bars and didn't ask for anything in return." Lila smiled softly. "Your sister likes extra powdered sugar, doesn't she?" The woman blinked. Then she hugged Lila without warning. No more words. Naomi drove them home, humming patriotic jazz through the car's speakers. Claire leaned her head on the window, watching the town flicker past in streetlights and silence. Later that night, Lila stepped onto her condo balcony. A sparkler in one hand, a match in the other. The stars blinked overhead like they were paying attention. She struck the match. The sparkler hissed to life. She didn't cry, didn't need to. The sparkler burned bright, quick, wild, then out. She walked inside, opened her desk drawer, and pulled out a plain manila envelope. Inside, a photocopy of the mortgage she never signed away. She lit the corner with the leftover match, just enough to char the edges, let the fire kiss the paper without taking it whole. Then she slid it into a fresh envelope and wrote the address by hand. Kelsey Carson, personal mail, do not discard. She affixed the stamp. The next morning, it would go in the mail. The days were longer now, Missouri summer stretching itself across the sky like it didn't know when to quit. Lila sat in her balcony chair, the morning light catching on the rim of her coffee mug, the steam rising like something holy. From here, she could see the tops of the town she'd never left, the courthouse dome, the elementary school roof, and beyond it, the neighborhood where her name once graced a deed no one thought she'd remember. She remembered everything. The barbecues she cooked for without being thanked, the time Kelsey handed her a trash bag like it was a gift, the way Chase stood beside his wife while his mother shrank behind casseroles, but she didn't feel bitter anymore, just balanced. Like the final piece had clicked into place. Inside her condo, the air smelled like vanilla and browned butter. A fresh batch of oatmeal raisin cookies cooled on the counter, her last delivery for the shelter before the kitchen volunteers took over full-time. She boxed them neatly, tied the lid with twine, and placed a note on top. Keep going. Love needs feeding. She pressed her hand to the box for just a moment. Not to say goodbye, but to seal the warmth in. 2 days ago, a letter had come in a stiff white envelope, postmarked from the local history museum. Dear Ms. Carson, we are thrilled to archive your work with the Warm Table Project as part of our Modern Women of Mid-Missouri collection. Your story will be preserved for future generations as an example of civic legacy through compassion. It didn't brag, it didn't gush, but it sat on her mantle like a quiet crown. Naomi had screamed when she read it. You're going in the same archive as the county's first female judge. Lila smiled, folded the letter, and said, Good. Let them shelve us together. The envelope from Chase came on a Wednesday, handwritten, no return address, but she knew his slanted print like she knew the sound of his first cry. She opened it with steady fingers. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what I missed, what I let happen. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I see it now. He signed only his name. No plea, no excuse. She set the letter down on the kitchen table, then slowly she folded it and placed it in the back of her recipe box, between the banana bread and the spice cake. Some things didn't need replying, they just needed remembering. Later that evening, she went through her photos, real ones, not digital, and picked a frame from the back of her closet. She dusted off the glass, slid the picture inside, and placed it on the wall near the kitchen window. The 4th of July barbecue. Kelsey mid-laugh, plastic wine glass in hand, Chase grilling, back turned, and Lila, just barely in the corner, holding a plate of ribs and a faint, unreadable smile. She studied the photo for a long time, then she wrote the date beneath it. July 4th, 2023. Where it started, and beside that, in her neat, looping script, the day the smoke cleared. That night, she lit a single match on her balcony and used it to ignite a sparkler, just like she had at the award ceremony. The night was quiet, still, Missouri air thick with memory. The sparkler hissed, flared, and danced in the dark. She whispered to herself, barely above the wind, "Happy Independence Day, sweetheart."